run down all these smaller forces, of course, take advantage of all these. You know, our influence is very slowly building up, and these little battles help here. We've got 4 armies with us right now, about 800 troops, but we're not going to take the same approach as the last time, right? That would be the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. This time we're going to pursue more of a guerrilla warfare. Of course, Baron York, he is devious. He's got just enough intelligence to succeed as a leader in a campaign like this. And Baron York, unlike a lot of people, when they experience disastrous results, he doesn't just come back. He comes back with a vengeance. He comes back with a furiousness, right? This guy was embarrassed. 2 different major instances where he was going to be able to take down the Western Empire, and twice foiled rather late in his attempt. Of course, the last 2 really have been the result of the reinforcement system. But we're just going to roll along with this reinforcement system for now. I like the effect, right? It's made things difficult here as we spread some of these prisoners around. I like that it's made things much more unpredictable for me as a commander, of course, because I'm quite experienced. That makes it a little bit, well, a lot harder, frankly, to play Bannerlord, and I think that's good. Now, whether or not we continue to use the reinforcement mod throughout this campaign, we shall see. But in order to justify Baron York's devious trait here, right, it's time to engage in some guerrilla warfare. Let's go ahead and start an episode here. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment's YouTube channel. Our channel is dedicated to this Vlandian campaign. Our channel is dedicated to this egotistical, maniacal, murdering, rampaging, say some more bad adjectives, bad things about this guy. Baron York is at it again here. Now, the Western Empire, nothing has changed, right? It's about, actually, I'm not sure, 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks since our disastrous defeat here to a bunch of Western Empire forces that sallied, or more accurately, came to the rescue. Let's see what we do here for upgrades. Show this army for you. We've got Forest Bandit boss, Forest Bandits. Some of these troops we captured along the way. A lot of these troops, of course, we still had in reinforcements at Rovault. We can do a bunch of upgrades, and it's interesting here. I have a lot of these billmen that have been upgrading through little battles. We're going to have like a potential pike and shot army here. And I think that's good, right? Because this is a viable tactic with Vlandia. I still prefer shield and shock, but what you can actually do is you can do both with Vlandia, right? We can do a mix here of pikemen and Volgiers. I think both of those units are really useful under the right circumstances. Our enemy here has quite a lot of heavy cavalry with crossbow behind him, with shock troops nearby. It's going to be very effective. Now, we've got a battle looming here. I know I interrupted myself. That kind of thing happens all the time. But we're going to do a little guerrilla warfare here. Baron York is going to do some village raiding, right? We're not going to let the Western Empire off the hook so easily here, right? We are going to methodically destroy this kingdom here in this 3rd attempt. I guess this could fail, right? Of course, now you guys see that we're just narrating these as we play and not save scumming, because a lot of guys would not have allowed what happened in the last, I don't want to say few episodes, but, you know, the last couple of major instances. A lot of guys would have just, I don't know, they would have refought him or something like that. We're going to roll right along here, and we're going to roll right the fuck through this Western Empire force, because, again, we have this pike and shot formation. We've got probably 60% of our troops are tier 4 and 5, so it's a fairly upgraded army, and this is just gravy, right? This is a good battlefield for this, right? We have this ridge. It's a peekaboo ridge. We're going to be able to defend this. Their cavalry is going to get mass executed. Hopefully our troops are hungry and they like horse meat, because there's going to be an awful lot of dead horses at the outset of this battle. I won't always do that. Don't tell you this battle is a certainty for us to win, but the power bar barely favors the enemy. The landscape here, you tacticians that are out there watching this, you guys are drooling with me too, right? We essentially have multiple different tactical advantages here all at the same time. The buildings make it hard for their archers to get set up and get line of sight. We're going to use that ridge. We're going to use our crossbow. We have 337 crossbow in this mixed army, so almost half, in fact, exactly, or at least not quite half, but about 45% of our army is crossbow. A lot of the fellows know on the channel that I advocate for that. On the role-playing level, I'm going to say that too much. Baron York does like infantry. He is a bull. He likes using cavalry and infantry to destroy the enemy, but a lot of our allied forces here have crossbows. Now look at all these pikemen. I think we might even have more. We'll try to enlarge that division. Again, just a refresher here, the 3rd and 7th division are going to be our shock and pike divisions, the 7th being the pike. And you can use those guys in this spread nature right next to cavalry. You can put them, you know, basically it's almost as effective as a cav line, and in some cases it's more effective because they kill cavalry coming down the hill. You run right into those braced pikes. Infantry square there will do well to hold off the enemy, and we've got enough cavalry here also to hold great defensive lines before we counter punch here. 4th, 5th. Let's get the 6th in the rear again. And we're going to try to roll up one of the enemy flanks here. At some point or other, they're going to have a zerg of troops sort of held at bay by our different forces here. And with 2 different large cavalry divisions probably sustaining light losses in the early stages of this battle, we're going to have some delicious tactical opportunities. Now, all these pikemen here, right? This is just going to be savage. You need to be able to see our... There we go, a little better. You can see the little icons above their head. This is going to be savage because their cavalry runs right over that ridge, coming downhill into pikes. The reinforcement system, as you can see, is still operating, right? Our enemy's getting more troops, but unless they get like 3,000 extra troops here, I don't think they can win this battle. I guess I can make an ass out of myself. Look at these guys bracing. These guys are like, come get some. The crossbow now get told to fire away. The shock troops right here are eagerly anticipating some dead horsemen to kill. The bolts are absolutely shredding everything in sight. They got a few kills there, probably a spearing pikemen and stuff like that. And these guys, they're really only good for the first couple waves. The pikemen, it sort of degrades into chaos. That's where your Volgiers are better, because these guys are running around the whole battle just carving people apart. Whereas your pikemen are really good for that initial charge, and then less good against the rest. Now, I'm watching for that infantry vanguard, right? We want them to eat our square. They're kind of zerging the pikemen. Not much we can do about that. They came right down the center, and that's, of course, where I had our pikes. I probably should have kited the pikemen. That's something maybe I'll get used to doing. Nevertheless, now we can bring in infantry, start pushing it in on the enemy infantry, and then we have this shock troop division that we're just going to drag right in here, right? From our right to our left. Come with me. Kill these fucking infantrymen. Have a feast. Almost none of our crossbow are being attacked, right? Because there's so much chaos up front. In fact, every time I look back there, look at this commander. Kill them all. Yeah, you're the dead man, dude. You are surrounded and torn apart. That's the realistic, or what's it called? It's called the Immersive Battlefield mod. That's one of my top 10 mods, right? It's incredibly immersive. The enemy commanders yelling commands. Kill them all! I think it's great, right? That's a great mod. Now, with the infantry bottled up there, I'm trying to get some crossbow here to their flank before they regroup, but it looks like I'm 10 seconds late. You know, usually the enemy infantry will regroup, minus a few heads, and of course, if you could position archers fast enough, you could scorch them. There, we were a little bit slow, so let's reset formations here. Absolutely no reason to change anything, right? The enemy doesn't have, some kind of advantage. We can let the crossbow bolts fly for a while, but I think we'll conserve some ammo fire, arrow fire here, crossbow fire. 1, 2, 3. We still got 3 solid crossbow divisions. Like I said, they barely even took damage there. The pikes did get, beat up pretty bad, and that's definitely the big weakness of the pikes. They really should have shields. Again, on the 0.1% chance there's someone from Tail Worlds listening. If you want to make Vlandian pikesmen more useful, just give them a shield. Look at this guy. You're off your horse, dude. A spear in the face. If the Vlandian pikemen had decent, not great, of course, you can't give them great melee ability, and then they're like the best unit in the game. But if you give them a good shield and a good sword, and they can fight okay on foot, make them like a wildling, for example, they would be very usable units, right? Most people just think they're garbage, and I'll grade them like a C+. They have their uses, but gun to my head, I'm taking Volgiers all day, right? Volgiers and sergeants. I would not use pikemen unless I had to. Now, here in this situation, our allies have pikemen. We have pikemen. Some of them I intentionally did just to show you guys tactics here. They have their uses. They're not as efficient as Volgiers. And of course, we've done plenty of tests and done many tactical videos showing that. Now, the enemy's got a huge amount of troops, but they're lollygagging to catch up to us here. Sometimes that's because they have a couple crossbowmen that are just up there shooting these dipshits. Or if there's 3 guys, you can see there's a couple of bolts kind of flying in here. If the AI has a little bit of line of sight, sometimes they'll just sit there and shoot like a stupid asshole and waste our time. You sort of got to be patient. Now, of course, we can use the RTS mod. But it does look like they're starting to get some cojones here. And bad decision, right? Unleash hell. Here come the bolts. They're going to get shredded. And I think this is going to go so fast. Let's do our envelopment process here, right? Let's make sure that they don't clamp down on us too bad. Now, of course, the AI is immediately bringing troops over here, but that's okay, right? It's going to break up their attack. They're already down to some recruits. We can pull this infantry square down the hill right into the fire. Damn it, I'm fat-fingered. Right into the fire of all of our crossbow. That'll pull the enemy down the hill. They're being shredded on the way down. And on that far side, shield and shock, right? And this is my preference to pikemen. Volgiers with cavalry in front of them. So over here we have a cav division and a Volgier division. And all we're going to do is just follow me. I want these guys embroiled in the enemy. That way all these archers and whatnot, these weaker troops, now they're going to face our 1st division in the front, that infantry that was in a square. The 2nd and 3rd division now are coming in hard on the enemy flank. Almost all of our crossbow can still shoot, right? So the enemy is getting completely obliterated here. This is about as bad as it gets. Of course, to make matters worse, half of their forces look like they're recruits. So this is wholesale murder here. This is getting your shit pushed in. Half of their troops literally look like they're running around like, I'm supposed to fight, but I think I'd rather run here. My gut instinct here is we should run, fellas, and that is, of course, the right move for the enemy here. Right? There's no chance of winning in this battle for them. And the butchery is on. Right? The shock troops are in there. The 2nd division is boring in there. They're being shot, and these are the smartest guys on the battlefield here, right? These guys are all heading back to their stinky ass homes, their little wattle and daub, I think it was called, the little buildings, you know, where it's basically made of pieces of farm material and hay and shit like that. A lot of your peasants in the year of this game, they didn't have, like, even the nicer English cottages of the 15th, 16th, 17th century where they started having, what looked like real homes just with sort of hay on top. Back then, they were literally making houses out of, like yard waste and kind of gluing it together. That's the wattle and daub. I think it has to do with kind of like a clay material where they would get the shit stuck together. And in a lot of cases, the house was literally torn down every year and they'd build a new one. Imagine that. You'd have a new house, or at least new material for your little hovel. A pretty grim existence. And let's not forget, you're talking maybe 2 rooms, usually 1 room, and that included the animals because you would keep them in the winter indoors for safety and for their warmth, right? Cuddled up against your sheep who's taking a big shit every 4 hours. All right, a highly profitable victory, even more upgrades. We get some prisoners. Our army size is undiminished, right? Because we keep rescuing prisoners from these forces. This is one of those situations where the game does tend to snowball. And what the fuck just happened? All these guys just appear. I think that might have been another thing, another reinforcement mod. I don't want to call it a glitch because it's sort of designed like this. So there's a battle here. Instantly, there's a whole bunch of troops here, and they look like they teleported here, and we just killed like 1,400, and now there's another 1,200. So kind of strange. Now, we're injured. We're a little banged up here, so we could lose this battle. And if it's on the same battlefield, I think we'll try a little different approach. I think we'll try to cut off these enemies, envelop them, and make sure there's no survivors, right? That way we don't have to fight a 3rd wave here. So we'll just keep narrating here. Talk more about some of the historical parts, from the medieval era. We could definitely talk more about guerrilla warfare. Right, guerrilla warfare is not something that really existed, at least in an organized form, until the last couple 300 years. The term guerrilla warfare comes from La Guerrilla. It's a Spanish word. I think I'm pronouncing right, and it means, I think, the little war, right? The small war. And of course, it mostly relates to the Napoleonic invasion of Spain in the early to mid, not mid, but about 1810, give or take. The Spanish were unable to defeat Napoleon and his juggernaut Grand Armée. And of course, they, like a lot of people who can't win at war and they're being wholesale massacred and conquered, you'll resort to any manner possible to win. And the Spanish, using their rugged highlands, using their very complicated hills and valleys and stuff like that's very inhospitable terrain compared to France. At least for a large army. These fucking guys here are just hyper aggressive on me. Fuck you guys. We're gonna draw and quarter some of the enemies after this battle here, attacking Baron York. So these Spanish partisans, right? Partisans, a term most of you probably heard, but I'll just explain it. It's usually people who are not engaged officially in a military group, but they are fighting, for their kingdom. They were heavily involved in guerrilla attacks on Napoleon and the French army, and it became very effective, right? In a lot of cases, you'll hear Napoleon's invasion of Spain as his downfall, that combined with Russia, and sometimes it's called Napoleon's Vietnam, right? Because it was just a nasty environment. They would have a bunch of success, and then he would leave, and things would fall apart, and then the guerrillas would tear up his supply lines and capture major armies occasionally because the armies were complacent. So we've got our forces here on the right. Let me shift the tactics. We're pulling the enemy in towards the center, and I've also got two different divisions. One archer division, crossbow division, I keep saying archers, on our far right. That way we can get our forces up there to flank the fuck out of the enemy if and when they both try to regroup, and obviously when they try to flee. When these units rout, trying to kill all of them, shoot them all down with crossbow. So, sort of hoping that was the majority of their forces, although I do see reinforcements coming up here. A plan like that doesn't always work well, even though tactically that was still very devastating. We can get some guys here on the edge. Now, there's a little bit of a challenge to doing a peekaboo ridge here, right? Because they have archers. If we come over this ridge with our troops without some kind of force to help them, we will get shot to pieces. And to defeat a peekaboo ridge, you do it with the unison of troops or with a big cavalry charge, right? Lots and lots of cavalry just running through the enemy ranks, and obviously what that does is it interrupts the shit out of their troops. Shifting gears here as we finish off this Western Empire force, kill this flag bearer. So guerrilla warfare, it wasn't exactly invented in the early 1800s in Spain, but it becomes more commonplace, right? It becomes organized. These guys were working actively, in some cases, with the Spanish military, right? The Spanish military was inferior to the French. The French was basically the best in the world, was trucking the Spanish as well as everybody else. And these guerrilla warfare units were seriously hampering the war effort, right? Because they were doing things like killing messengers. They were doing things like attacking supply depots, sacking supply trains, right? Sometimes supply depots, or not depots, supply trains full of wagons, full of cornmeal or whatever the fuck they had, food for the troops, meat and shit. They were having to give them small armies, basically, to defend the supply convoys, and obviously that's highly degrading to the army, right? If you're having to pull 200 over here and 500 over here, 300 to this supply depot, it's the little war, and it wears you out. And that it also leads credence to, there's a Spanish saying, it's not a Spanish saying, I think it's just a war philosopher saying that Spain is a place where small armies are defeated and large armies starve. The notion being that there's no success possible militarily in Spain. Of course, that's not quite accurate, but with proper guerrilla tactics, it's very difficult, essentially, to root out a whole bunch of guerrillas fighting at the margins of the battlefield. A lot of times, probably doing unethical things. you know, breaking some of the sort of standard codes of warfare, and it defeated Napoleon, right? And of course, I mentioned it before, it wasn't the only thing. The Russia disaster was a big part of it, but Spain was a huge headache. Sometimes I've heard it called as ulcer, you know, it's Napoleon's ulcer, just something that nagged at him, and it like slowly bled him to death. A very accurate depiction of it. And being slowly bled to death here is what we're planning on doing with this Western Empire. That's why I'm nonstop rambling about guerrilla warfare and shit like that. We're not planning on sieging their city here with them having, you know, 4,200 troops inside. What I'm going to try to do here is pick them apart, kill as many troops as we can, raid all these fucking villages, right? Maybe we'll even starve out the city, destroy the garrison. We might even resort to a few other little tricks up my sleeve here that I have to make sure that this Western Empire goes away. Of course, again, we go back to the conundrum where Baron York is sort of a bull who would just charge straight ahead. And then obviously I'm using some tactical and campaign type strategy here. That is because you guys won't benefit if I just throw myself at the enemy every single time. It won't be that entertaining to watch either. So we're going to do a little combination of both here. We're going to do some raiding, we're going to do some intelligent stuff, and you're just going to have to sort of understand the role-playing element, that even though sometimes some of the stuff we're doing is sort of realpolitik, you know, good campaign strategy, Baron York is not this brilliant war leader, right? We are role-playing, of course, and his stats also, right? He has, I think, 5 attribute points for intelligence. My lord, what about raiding villages? You don't care for it than any before? Shut the fuck up, fucking companion. We'll get a new companion. That's a little role-playing there. Baron York cares not about his companion's opinions. Shut the fuck up, right? He is definitely a megalomaniac. Baron York takes advice from no one, right? This guy's definitely in charge. He thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, even though he almost never is. It's just one of those things, right? This is a personality type, and unfortunately, this personality type does become common with people who obtain power. They just, you know, their ego gets a hold of them. Unfortunately, there's often adulation. People give them all kinds of accolades and, oh, you're great, Mr. fucking Baron. You're doing an amazing job. And the next thing you know, these people just think they're the greatest thing on earth. Unfortunately, the human species is vulnerable to this type of adulation, and it leads them wrong, right? Because ultimately, all good leaders need advisors. Napoleon had advisors. He wasn't always eager to listen, or at least to take their advice, but at least he had them, and he did often at least listen to some of their ideas. He would ask them questions. Napoleon was also fairly unique. Even philosophers, brilliant people of the 18th, 19th century said that Napoleon's probably the most completely, the most complete package, the most intelligent, unique, brilliant person of the last 200 years, right? You hear statements like that about Napoleon. So if you're going to have anybody who's making all the decisions, at least make sure that they're, a brilliant person like that. All right, we'll do a little castle siege here of Garantor. I probably won't continue to narrate
be a lot
through
there
most of this
for
here.
us to show you. So we took Garantor Castle. In fact, we'll just roll along here. Looking for ways to damage this Western Empire. Of course, they're down to one city now. This is it, Ortysia. However, they have so many armies here, I'm very reticent to assault it. Of course, our influence is still building back up. I suppose we could call a few nobles, but obviously if we call a bunch, we're at risk of having another disastrous defeat. So, what is the key here to victory? Right, we are going to try to outthink the Western Empire here, outthink the AI, account for the reinforcement mod. We are going to try to fight them in the open field. We're definitely going to raid more villages here. We're going to continue to do some guerrilla warfare. We might even use some units here to bait the enemy, but we want an open field battle, and of course we want to damage their financial capacity to keep troops supplied at Ortysia. Now, war is definitely looming to the north with the Battanians. I can tell you that for sure. The Battanians are starting to regain territory back up there. Of course, they pushed the Western Empire out with our help. The Sturgeons are just entering the picture to the far east, but so far they haven't been that big of an effect on this campaign. I think we've had just a handful of battles against them, more skirmishes than anything. Of course, because Battania is in the way. In the very beginning of this campaign, I actually remember fighting Sturgia in several battles as a mercenary. Of course, a lot of those episodes will be on the Patreon. They will not be episodes that we share for this campaign just because they're not real interesting, right? It's where we had 90 forces and helped an army of 300 defeat an army of 400, stuff like that. Of course, guys interested in the early part of the campaign may be interested, and if you want to see more from this campaign, that's where to go. It's a Patreon channel. We're going to do a little village raiding here and see what occurs. Clearly, they have enough enemies to warrant a threat here. There must be 1,000, maybe 1,800, 1,500, something like that, troops running around in this valley. But alas, they're not organizing, they're not attacking us. So we'll do a little financial damage here. I think they'll only have one village left supporting Ortysia. See if that dipshit this dipshit companion is saying he doesn't like that. Shut the fuck up. You're not in charge. If you want to leave, this guy's welcome to leave. We're not going to, Baron York's not about to let his companions dictate his policy. He's definitely going to be a dictator. He's the definition of a dictator. Now, all these different armies here, we're going to have battle. It's kind of just the nature of how and how it occurs and why. Now, we got to probably flee. We might be able to catch some of these guys. If we could just catch some of these armies out here, that's worth chasing them down. In fact, it looks like we've got Japhalia here. You're captured. We won't play these out. We'll just auto-resolve this. Unless the armies are close to ours at this stage of the campaign, close to ours in numbers, we won't play it out. Now, with the reinforcement mod, it's different, right? If you're close to numbers with the enemy, it's a battle you can lose. And that's a new wrinkle for me in Bannerlord, right? Previously, of course, if you outnumbered the enemy or maybe they had a small advantage on you, the power bar was close, you're almost always going to win with good tactics, of course, with a good army and good tactics here. But in this instance, with the reinforcement mod, you just never know what's going to happen, right? You don't know if 600 forces are going to join the battle or if 2,600 are going to join, right? And they can be long rolling battles, which I think is great. Now they're starting to form armies here. The Western Empire Hornets are starting to get fucking fired up here because we've just raided and destroyed all the villages here for Ortysia. I think that's all of them. Maybe they got one more. So battle is looming here. I know you guys are waiting patiently. And sometimes I will just pull this narration. We'll do some editing later on here. But other times I'm just going to roll with it. Now, we want to make sure we catch... Oh, shit. Okay, they readily engaged, even though it seems like we have a small edge in the power bar. So we'll readily fight this, right? This is a battle where reinforcements are likely. Hard to know how many reinforcements will join. Like I said, that's a nice random element. We could do the land bridge, right? We could just flee across there. But I think let's try a unique peekaboo ridge here with these two little bulbous ridges. That little valley should give us a nice safe spot to put some of our pikemen, some of our less defendable units, crossbow protecting them, cav wall on the left side here. And that should be very effective here. That's the kind of formation there and landscape where you can handle multiple waves, right? I don't mind if they bring in some reinforcements here. We're ready for a challenge. Of course, we don't want to suffer another defeat, but with challenges comes defeat, right? We're not going to play this Bannerlord campaign and win every single battle. I know some guys do that. I just think that's really boring. And of course, if you want to see that, fortunately, there are plenty of YouTube channels out there with Bannerlord content. Here, we're going to strive for dramatic. We're going to strive for gigantic, epic, sprawling battles where I'm pressed to the max. My tactical tool bag is necessary. I need every little advantage I can get here to win some of these battles. That's the way I want it. And of course, it's my YouTube channel, but I think a lot of you guys enjoy that too. So let's get, we'll have our 3 different crossbow divisions sort of placed strategically down there in that valley. We've got our pike and Volgiers separated, the 3rd and the 7th. Now they've got the sun edge, right? Our units are looking into the sun. That would be another really interesting effect. If the weather mod, one of these guys who's making these realistic weather mod, if the sun in your eyes affected your crossbow, right? It's, on one hand, you can see their units coming over the ridge easier, right? Because they'll stand out against the sun. On the other hand, looking into the glare of that sun would be brutal, especially in real life, of course, where the sun literally, it hurts to look at it. get these divisions moved up. You can ignore that attack. We're not attacking here. We're simply moving units into position. Get some pikemen right in front. We'll put the 3rd division of shock troops right behind them. That's pike and shock, right? That's a different, not pike and shot, but pike and shot. We'll get our pikes basically in front of the cav, and then by that point, time they get to the Volgiers and our other shock troops, they're going to be moving slowly and easier targets. That's a lot of pikemen in there, right? We've got a bunch of cavalry. Thanks to the Battlesize mod, we just have troops everywhere for this battle. And so does the enemy, right? They have a juggernaut amount of infantry and crossbow coming up, but they also seem to have quite a bit of cavalry. So, StrengthenAI mod, bless you modders, man. These battles are just huge, right? And these battles, honestly, fellas, I mean, you guys know this. Most of you guys know this. They're going to get much bigger than this. Right? This is, what is it, 1,500 or 1,200 against our 1,200? Something like that. We're probably going to see 4,000. We might even see more than that. And of course, it depends on how much we pump up the StrengthenAI mod. Now, there is a fucking horde of cavalry. They've got a whole bunch of infantry and archers. I thought that was cavalry. That's infantry and archers there. They're already a little bit slanted to our flank. I'm not thrilled about that, right? I would much rather prefer them come over that top valley. We can manipulate them a little bit. But coming over that valley would be better than this valley here, because their infantry is going to maul our pikemen. Now, their cavalry just died, right? They just charged our pikemen. It looks like they realized their error immediately and turned around. And here we go, right? This is what I mean. The enemy is getting reinforcements here. So the nebulous effect starts to enter this. If you've never heard of that word, it basically means we're not sure how many enemies we're fighting. I don't bring up the status window. We just know, now the enemy forces are reinforcing this army, right? That's a great thing for this campaign. It's going to make it ultra difficult. It's going to make, like I said, I won't belabor the point any more than I already have. It's going to make a lot of random variability and difficulty. And unless I experience problems based on your feedback, based on my own enjoyment and the challenge of it, we're probably going to roll with this for a while. And just keep it as part of the campaign. I reserve the right to pop it out, right? We'll just disable the mod. It's almost always going to hurt us. And what I mean by that is we are going to get help. In fact, in this campaign, we've had help from allies in critical moments. But I think most of the time it's going to help the enemy, and that's a good thing, right? Because the enemy AI and Bannerlord, once you get good at tactics and develop a savage army, it needs all the help it can get. Now, they're only sending cavalry, which is unfortunate AI, because these guys are completely massacred. We've got such a good defensive setup here. Shock troops, pikemen. There's lines of cav walls slowing them down. Our archers are ultra protected at the bottom of this hill. There's a square of infantry slowing them down here. We're just charging briefly here just to massacre everything else that's stood up here. And then we'll regroup, right? We're just going to sit in this valley until that enemy archer infantry vanguard commits. And they're fucked when they do, right? They're going to try to come over that ridge, right? That's not something I want to do. No player would want to do that. And the AI here is, because they attacked us, they're forced to do this, right? I don't know if you saw the guy, he was like, all right, we got you bitches. One of those stupid guys with the wolf hats. He was like, yeah, we captured your ass when they engaged our army here. These guys they're as dumb as they look, right? These guys, what a dipshit. Yeah, you're captured. So they're already getting drilled by our archers, right? They're coming right over the top of that ridge, getting smoked. We've got to be careful with our ammo use, so you'll see me kind of cycle it on and off. Right, when they're at the margins of it right there, you definitely have your guys firing away. But when they back off, right, and there's 20 cavalry and 30 infantry, you don't want all your guys shooting, right? So you guys that are trying to emulate some of our tactics, that's why I mentioned some of that stuff, right? It's very important in big, long battles like this with unknown variables, right? I don't know how many enemies are coming in. There's obviously a lot of them, right? They extend to the sunrise. There's just a huge host of foes coming in. And it's a new dynamic now. Every single battle can potentially be epic, where you might think it's sort of an ordinary battle on the channel. I like that too, both for myself and for you guys. Every battle now has the potential to be unbelievably difficult and huge in nature, right? There could be 3,000, 4,000 enemies in this battle if the various different forces join.
And so methodical is the word of the day. Now, that was an accident. We're trying not to show you guys too much of the status. I have come to condemn you. All these same units. Look at this pompous noble riding back and forth. Let's kill this fucking guy. Hopefully we can do it in front of their vanguard. I need a javelin. I don't have any javelins. Maybe we can salvage a javelin on the ground or something like that. Here we go. In fact, there's, just as the doctor ordered, it looks like there's a full bag right there and a spare one. Oh shit, did I just put a... Okay, I think we're good. We got our sword still? Yeah, we're good. All right, we got our javelin, our sword, 3 or 4 javelins. And where's that pompous lord? What are these? Oh, these are reinforcements coming up. That's good, right? Reinforcement position, your own reinforcement position is something as a commander you always want to think about. If you guys remember where we started maybe 150 yards behind us here, right? Give or take. And that's preferable because that means our reinforcements aren't cut off. They're not getting mowed down on the way in here. Where's that fucking lord? Fucking dipshit. Fucking lord trying to attack me here. I hear him yelling commands. He's yelling, move. Let's kill him. He's right in our infantry there. Die, motherfucker. Whoops. Sorry, pikeman. And we got his ass. Onyx, eat shit. Now, they're being methodical, but like I said before, and I'll run through this sometimes with the RTS mod. We'll speed up some of these. The most important thing with the decline slope, a reverse slope, and or peekaboo ridge defense like this is being methodical. Now, here's another thing you want to consider for a battle like this. If you notice what they have for troops now, right now they have like 9 cavalry, 20 cavalry. Because they've been immolating their cavalry at the beginning of this battle, we have a major advantage in this battle. We have mobility. They don't, right? We can now move cavalry way off their flank, and they don't have much ability to counter it. In fact, if they chase after them, we'll simply squeeze them between our forces. So the 8th Corps now is combined with some of the troops in the 2nd Corps. I'm going to send them preemptively way to the enemy's right flank, our left flank, and those guys are going to be part of an envelopment process because these guys are going to regroup, right? When they get more reinforcements, they're going to run back like they always do, right? Which is actually not bad AI, right? You get reinforcements, you want to make sure that you're consolidated. However, knowing that, we're going to prepare for it. Now, there's a chance they don't try to regroup, that this is what they have and they just attack us. Either way, having a cavalry division on their flank ready to hammer them is going to pay dividends. Now, in preparation of that, right, we're going to essentially prepare units to charge here. I'm going to get this 7th and 3rd Division moved a little closer. I still have some cavalry here in the 2nd Division, so they can be part of the charge. But look at those guys, those little blips on the radar way over there. The AI is sort of vaguely aware of it, but when it's a small percentage of your total army, they won't like change where all their troops are to go chase after those guys, right? It's the AI has at least some common sense. Now, that's what you want to see. As soon as they merge over the shadows right there. Now, I want a few more guys to commit here, so we're going to be a little bit patient. Sometimes they'll come a little deeper in. Right now, they're just hitting shields mostly, killing a few guys. And I want them to commit a little bit more here, but sometimes they won't. If they have just enough of the angle, right, you might as well shoot. We're getting some good death spam there. The reason why it's better to hold ammo there, besides the fact we're going to run out of ammo, is a lot of your shots go right over their head, right? There's a lot of guys or a lot of their units are not visible to our archers, right? Only a row or two. Much better that there's a huge, thick mass of them, right? Because then your missed shots kill somebody else. And unfortunately, I think where they're standing right now is not perfect for us. Now, the AI probably will move forward. We'll see what they do here. They're spreading out on our flank here. That's, I think, our cue to rush these guys. That's actually very bad for us because they're going to start spraying these pikemen and shit. Let's start to get aggressive on them here. This is actually good AI. It was like it was making a frontal assault and realized it wasn't going to work. Let's drag shock troops, the 2nd Division, the 3rd Division, and the crossbow straight into the enemy front. We're going to bring this 8th Division around to envelop their archers. And what an archer line it is, right? It literally stretches across this whole fucking valley. That's okay, though, because what a cavalry charge we have coming, right? We have hundreds. I mean, a couple hundred cavalry coming this way, so eat shit, bitches. Now, we're definitely suffering losses here. This is going to be a lot bloodier because the AI adjusted, right? It did probably the best thing it could do. Not only that, but these archers are spread pretty well also. 300 archers.
Now, I'm moving up crossbow aggressively here. In fact, I'm not even telling them to charge. I want them to run through the enemy troops, basically get over here. That way they're in position. And then once they're in position, we'll keep this cavalry division, keeping all these archers busy, and those guys will unleash hell. Now, two benefits to that. One is they're point blank shooting the enemy, right? The other advantage, of course, is that the guys that regroup from the enemy are going to get smoked by all those crossbow that are standing right there, right? So the enemy, it's you know, they're going to suffer some losses. In fact, they're trading blows in there. I see them fighting hand to hand. But once the enemy is occupied with cavalry here, once they start to regroup and rout, it's just a total massacre, because all the troops at the back of the line here are ours. And of course, it also gives them a good positioning for the next enemy wave, which looks like is incoming. Got this another beautiful scene here. We're losing units left and right. They still have a ton of archers here, just kind of roaming in a huge wide arch. For once, the AI is using a good archer formation, kind of this big, super spread, long line. Like, that's about as good as the AI usually does. So another round here, but I don't see a bunch of cavalry and archers. I think they're down to the dregs. So let's envelop them here. The rest of the units are pushing forward. We could barrel cavalry in on the enemy flank, and this battle is going to be over in a jiffy. Now, in this situation, right, I wanted the enemy to get reinforcements. Not only because it made this battle more interesting, more difficult, but more rats in the trap, right? All these little peasants. The enemy, of course, is really down to the dregs. They don't have juggernaut armies anymore, because even with the StrengthenAI mod, it takes the AI a little bit of time to develop good armies, right? In other words, to gain the EXP, to get some high-level units, and it's not enough time here, right? We've been assailing the Western Empire virtually non-stop now for about a year, over a year of gameplay. And this is, if this is not it, this is going to be close to it, right? Because the AI now, or the Western Empire now, is probably down to 1,500 or 2,000 troops defending Ortysia. We've got a lot of their lords captured. Of course, a lot of their forces have been destroyed in these two battles. And now it's time for Baron York to enjoy a 30-second peasant killing spree here. Right? He's going to take out some of his anger that he wasn't born into the nobility, and he has to pretend that he's a noble. If you're not aware of that storyline, that's one of the storylines we're rolling along with here, and there will be implications of that. And this Western Empire force melted away pretty easily. Hopefully some tactical little nuggets in there for you fellas as we roll on. Now, a gigantic amount of prisoners here, which is going to make, frankly, this next stage easy mode, right? Because what happens, I'll mention this little thing, most guys know this, but you see those troops, 100 or whatever plus, that's not all the troops that were prisoner here. Just like the loot, when you're in an army and the enemy has a bunch of troops, in other words, rescued former allied troops, everybody gets them. In other words, all of the armies that are in our army, the AI basically has, you know, its pick of some troops to add to those units, meaning that that battle was basically a zero net loss battle for us. Whatever losses we suffered, and it wasn't very much. Look at our force. It's like 1,500 still, almost 1,600. And we're going to be able, it looks like, to trap a few more here, trap a few more rats. Our army is full, and it's taken a while, right? This process has been laborious to eliminate this kingdom, but that's your StrengthenAI mod. That is the, and that I want that for this campaign, right? I want it to be gruelingly difficult. Now, we're not going to trudge through the weeds here like a 500-hour campaign. There will be some parts that are expedited, and I've mentioned it before for those guys that are hoping. We're not going to fight this down to the last castle. I don't know how guys manage that, where there's one castle left, one city, but we're not going to be doing that for this campaign. So the Siege of Ortysia looms. That's the next stage here, the final stage. And, you know, we're going to be methodical, but I am going to use the RTS mod here. We're not going to, this is not going to be epic like the previous two battles, not unless somehow there's a huge amount of reinforcements that join. But our army now is gigantic. It's like 3,700. Of course, when you gain influence in Bannerlord, you get a snowball effect, right? We're able to call 8, 9 lords. Our army is huge because Baron York is done fucking around here, right? To quote Pulp Fiction, it's time to get medieval on their asses. We're not fucking around anymore here. And I'm still going to fight this battle out methodically, but I'm going to do it quickly. We'll do it with the RTS mod here, but I think this force is going to collapse quickly. I've got a fire catapult to jump on, and of course we have a huge army. The enemy had like 1,000, 1,200 defenders or something like that. And at this stage, they don't have a lot of reinforcements that can join this battle, right? It's not like they have, two huge armies that are roaming. No longer are they sieging any of our castles or cities. This Western Empire force is finally toast. And I think I actually said that. I think I said those words in one or two of those battles. So obviously it'll be major egg on my face here if we lose this. But with this huge crowd of elite units that have been building up experience as we've plowed the Western Empire into the corner here, I don't suspect that we're going to have too many issues here. I want to talk about the timeline of this campaign briefly, and my plans for the DLC, since this battle should be over. I'm going to just keep narrating here in case it gets difficult. The DLC, of course, is due middle of June. I am planning, of course, on playing the DLC. However, I'm trying to essentially juggle the DLC with this. This campaign actually may be wrapped up by June, although you still may have episodes. That is because sometimes I get a week, sometimes more, ahead of schedule. In other words, I'll make 2 or 3 episodes in over a weekend, and then I'll release those over a week, so that by the time, of course, you see that first or second episode, it might have been something that I played 5-6 days ago. And that is partly because I want to make sure that I have content while I play the beginning of the DLC. That this new DLC is going to be highly different, I think, than anything we've played before in Bannerlord. Ship battles, stealth, all kinds of dynamics to learn. And content providers like me, while we do, we'll do some live streams. I'll probably stream like one of the first days it's released, and we can explore it together. Maybe you're at work or something and you just want to see what it's like. I'll probably do a live stream. But we're going to eventually do campaigns and all kinds of tactics with it and stuff like that. But I'm not going to do tactics and try to show you, sort of some of the things we can do with the DLC until I learn it, right? So we'll do a little flyover here. I'll do a few of these little cutscenes as I finish this spiel about the DLC. So we're going to definitely endeavor to play the DLC quite a bit before you fellas essentially have considerable content on the DLC from the channel. In other words, I'm not gonna have an epic campaign for the DLC on day one because I won't know enough about it. In other words, to have an epic campaign, right? It might just be a run-of-the-mill campaign as we get used to the mechanics of it. Baron York running around here. The AI is controlling my character. Hopefully it doesn't do something stupid. But this battle is over. The DLC looms, and that's not the right word for it. The DLC is highly anticipated. They've been working on it for a long time. The graphics look incredible. There was a Q&A, and they actually said that the graphics from that trailer, that's all in-game footage, which is, I dare say it's hard to believe, but if you look closely and if you watch or read their chat, they basically said, right, there's some editing done to it where they make it kind of look a little bit more like a cutscene, but basically they're saying that's the in-game engine, which is incredible because, of course, that trailer, anybody who watched that, if you're a Bannerlord fan, if you didn't have goosebumps, maybe you had yours taken out with your tonsils or something. It looks terrific. And, of course, we can all just hope that they implement things beautifully. Bannerlord itself, the main game needs some fixes, but obviously they're working on that as well. There's a patch they're working on for the non-DLC folks, right, which is going to be the minority, at least for a little while, right? A lot of people are going to be diving right into the new DLC as our juggernaut force here eats alive this Western Empire, and you can see the results, right? It's a smashing. We'll probably do a little bit of editing here. Our guys celebrating, and I'm enjoying this. We're doing very brief cutscenes here, probably to attach to an episode or something like that. Hopefully you guys can forgive me. This will take just a minute or two here. They did retreat to the keep, but I'm not going to bother. These are almost automatic, although once in a while I hear of guys losing these and then they get captured or something like that. That's a crazy dynamic there. It'd be nice if they improved that feature, right, where you could actually retreat to the inner keep with 150 troops and try to hold the enemy out. But I imagine the game dynamics would be difficult to create for that. So this should do it, right? When we hit done, yeah, the Western Empire sure as shit has been destroyed, right? They are no longer eat shit Western Empire. That was a slugfest. I'm not going to devastate the city, I think, here. We're losing a lot of reputation with some of the nobles. And even though I, as a person, don't give a shit about that, Baron York sort of does, right? He wants adulation from the nobles. He's hoping from prominent positions, maybe even to become king. And by the way, whether or not we become a new kingdom or part of Vlandia, and this is just God's honest truth, or however that saying goes, I don't know. I may become our own kingdom. I may not. I do have some storylines that are going to affect the campaign. But whether or not we decide that we want to make our own kingdom next to Vlandia, be at peace with Vlandia, or just stay with Vlandia the entire way, maybe it's your chance for you guys to impact the campaign on some level. If you really want to see us stay with Vlandia the whole campaign, right, leave it in the comments. If you really want to see us become our own kingdom, leave that in there as well. If you want to see us become a raiding pirate, merciless, tyrannical lord, well, you got your wishes, because that's who Baron York is. So it looks like Britannia is next, and we're going to wrap this episode up. I appreciate you fellas. The Western Empire is no more. Baron York, this despisable villain, continues to rampage in this campaign. Of course, you want to subscribe if you want to see more. Please hit that like button, and I will see you friends next time.